Really, we need a facility of sufficient size and capacity now to meet our future demands, not just from patients clearly, but also from visitors and from staff as well. So the timing of this unit was important to make sure we delivered on some of those promises in many respects for future generations. We have listened, as you'd expect, to concerns that have been raised by visitors and patients where they can over the years, and we've tried to respond to that. So the first point was listening to what patients were saying about the care we're able to give in the hospital. And the second thing is really preparing ourselves for perhaps a more complex future and building a unit that's got sufficient size and capacity for us to cope with the patients we expect to see in coming years.
The need for the building was that the existing ICCU unit was nearly 10-year-old. It was built, originally it was built out of a normal ward and just converted it, and we were having a number of problems with patient care. So what was decided that very, very quickly we needed a new ICCU unit.
We'd already delivered 2 28-bed wards at Bradford Royal Infirmary, which was another modular scheme. That scheme was delivered in 6 months from start to finish. They'd seen that we'd demonstrated that we could work as a team with DSSR and DKP, who were the other framework partners at Bradford Royal Infirmary.
The Trust went with the procurement route because they needed to deliver the new facilities in the quickest possible time that they had, and they saw the modular option as the best benefit to themselves.
One of the key drivers was to bring a lot of what we do to the bedside, whilst at the same time improving the environment for the patient. So you've got what I would consider two opposing things there. So whilst we want to bring monitoring, data collection, nurses working to the bedside, at the same time you want to allow the patient's privacy, a quieter environment, and not compromise on the terms of the quality they get, so not to compromise in terms of safety. And those things were quite carefully thought out in the design, so we looked to design features for that, such as, you know, the glass for visibility, for privacy.
And key drivers or key criteria, if I may say, were ensuring that our nursing staff can spend as much time as possible looking after the patient rather than spending time on doing long journeys, if I may say, within the unit.
The new ICCU at Sunderland is one of the most advanced in the country. The client came to us with a very innovative concept as to how they wish to deliver their ICCU service. It's always very exciting to work on schemes like that. In the delivery of 18 separate ICCU spaces separated by switchable glass walls, this is an industry-leading solution of which the Trust are rightly very proud.
So what was decided that very, very quickly we needed a new ICCU unit, and that the most important thing was to look at infection control issues. To enable this to happen, we decided that what we would do is have a dirty corridor, a clean corridor, and separate all of the dirty functions from the clean functions.
The coming together of all the members of the design team, including areas that sometimes were traditionally neglected, such as IT, has been a unique experience. Not only could we incorporate a lot of what the government expects of healthcare design in the future, single-sex accommodation, best practice in infection control, but it gave us the opportunity in a critical care area to really up the ante in terms of workflow, in terms of quality, the quality of the environment for the patient.
In terms of the design, right from day one of the main drivers was patient safety, and that would include infection control, but also national initiatives like privacy and dignity, lean and efficient working. They all figured highly, as well as some local initiatives that we discovered from patient surveys, so reducing noise, reducing the amount of time that families have to wait to get in to see their relatives.
And the key to this scheme was giving the client a high quality, clinically led design. And with that in mind, we worked closely with the Trust right from the start to make sure that the actual scheme layout was based on what they needed, and the specification was of a very high standard. We'd almost treated the scheme like a traditional design for the internal fit out. And it was only really the modules themselves which we left to the modular contractor to design.
what we tried to do was to go back and almost achieve a Nightingale style ward, which is much easier to keep an eye on the patients, but side rooms within that. So the idea about the glass came from that, just discussions and bouncing ideas around the table. The idea of an external corridor was an idea we'd seen on a DVD from the United States, which allowed the separation of visitors and waste disposal team, so that they weren't coming in the department. The visitors could come in their own separate entrance. So as far as possible, keep the department as quiet and as clean as possible.
The key for the client was the clinical functionality of the unit. You know, we were looking to do this within a modular scheme, and the general perception of modular is that you have a compromise on the layout of the building. So the way in which we did it was we designed the building around a modular, the sort of basic principles of a modular layout, and then it went out to all the modular contractors before we invited them to tender, so that we were sure that we'd get a scheme that the Trust was happy with.
What we had to look at was the visual aspect of everything. How would staff see it? The design in itself meant that it was long. It was a long building, therefore it was very important that staff were able to see patients and patients were to be able to see staff. So on this, what we looked at was to bring a lot of glass into it. What we had was a lot of glass doors, a lot of glass screens, which went opaque when you just press the button.
As with any hospital site, they are very complex sites. There was a lot of early enabling works on the project to move services, substations, catering departments. These all had to be moved out of the way before we could break ground with the new construction work.
The services for this new ward and intensive care block are a mixture of relatively simple in the ward accommodation, but then very complex for the intensive care. This was made slightly more interesting in that the intensive care unit sat in between ward floors, providing its own challenges in terms of integrating those services, at the same time as allowing us to deliver the floor plate, which the Trust were so keen to achieve.
The technology side of things, the monitoring system is unique to this company, and at the time we put it in, it was the world first installation of the system, and it's allowed us to bring many of the functions that traditionally were done by computers in the rooms closer to the bedside. So not only have we done away with computers within the rooms, but it's enabled us to integrate into other hospital systems from directly within the monitoring. So we've got one point of focus for the nursing staff, one point of focus for the medical staff.
My director came into my room in November 2008 and said that we needed a new ICCU unit plus some wards, and that the building was 9,000 square metres, but he wanted it as quick as possible. It ended up from the day him coming into my office until that building was actually opened fully was in actual fact 29 months. The design team provided exactly what the Trust required.
Resident medical staff were saying they weren't having to prescribe as much sedation. Again, it's an anecdote, little things like that. I think genuinely from the patients we're getting informal feedback that they find the environment much nicer. Privacy when they want it, but they can still retain visibility and look around. So I think the staff, their initial fears about single rooms, size of the unit, and their worries about being able to look after their patients have not been borne out.
It's given us the capacity to position ourselves for the future as a much more, or able to handle much more complex patients. It's a much better environment, as hopefully you'll be able to see. And of course the other side of that is actually we've got better engaged staff because they were part, as you know, of the design and the build of the unit itself. And as a result of having better engaged staff, clearly we hope that's going to lead to better morale and an improved service for patients in the future.